Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Martin O'Neill. At the Monroe County Commissioners meeting on November 29th, County Attorney Jeff Cockrell introduced an interlocal agreement with the City of Bloomington to confirm the initiation of a capital improvement board. Cockrell gave some history of the agreement, which had been put on hold during the pandemic.
I think it's important to note that the vast majority of things in this document were in a document that we had on our servers from 2019, 2020, before the pandemic, when we were approaching this level of understanding at that point in time. And then of course we all know the pandemic hit, and then this project of the convention center expansion kind of got put on hold. And then when we restarted the conversations last fall, we talked about it, and I think working with the city, we came to the conclusion that the CIB was indeed the right mechanism, but we needed to work out some of the issues. I believe the commissioners passed an ordinance creating the CIB last November, and it gave a deadline of December, the end of December, before to get it approved. It didn't ultimately get approved, but we got information from the city that led to, kind of revisiting this whole interlocal idea. And that's why we went back to the 19 document, because we were talking about the same issues back then. And so in my mind, the biggest item that this covers is the fact that both the city council and the county council have to approve the budget for both for the operation and use of the convention center and the CVC and essentially the whole tourism industry. And so to me, that's the big component of this. And I think everybody agrees to that. So it's not the one that's most talked about, but I stressed it last night. I want to stress it today, that I think that's the biggest component of this document.
Commissioner Julie Thomas asked if they could take more time before approving the agreement, as she wasn't comfortable with all of the items.
There are a lot of shalls and mays and bits and pieces in here that I'm not entirely comfortable with in terms of ensuring that this is a project that reflects both county and city interests. And that's the basis of my concern for that. So,
during public comment on the agreement, a capital improvement board member, John Weichart, shared that the new interlocal agreement would temporarily pass off the management of the building, which he did not believe is necessary.
I'm reminded, and I don't mean this to be critical, I'm reminded that there's a story that God assigned a committee to create a horse, and when they were finished, they presented the design of a camel. And it wasn't that they were not well-meaning in doing that, it's just that sometimes people on committees have various things they're looking at, others are not. I know this was a very complicated issue. I know the county, I don't speak for the county council, obviously. I know their interest, as I understand it, was in the CVC appointments, perhaps not in other areas in particular. I'm retired, so I can read stuff, and I obsess over stuff. So I can read the interlocal agreement, and I can read your ordinance, and then just mull over it. So that's how I stand before you this morning. It strikes me that there are a couple of questions I would encourage you to look at. One is that it appears to me that the interlocal agreement changes your CIB ordinance in terms of who's appointed to the CIB. There are new exclusions added. An exclusion you had has been taken out. And perhaps that was intentional, perhaps it was not, but I would encourage you to give thought to whether that's what you actually intended. The CIB ordinance gave to the CIB the authority for, among other things, management and operations of the convention center. The interlocal agreement would initially transfer that management and operations to the nonprofit city building corporation. I think implied is that the CIB will be so busy with construction and design that management and operations may be something that can be forestalled until a later date. And I would suggest that we're quite capable of walking and chewing gum at the same time. and that originally in the CIB ordinance, we were given that task. In our very first meeting, we said we had no intention of doing anything other, frankly, than maintaining the status quo in terms of management and operations. So I don't know why, perhaps you do, why that would be assigned for a period of time to a building corporation. Then with language that says when it's reasonably practicable, it will be reassigned to us in a negotiated contract. So I would suggest the CIB is quite capable of managing and operating the facility without that back and forth 2-year, what could be a 2-year process of switching that back and forth.
Cockrell added that the management of the convention centre would remain within the city and the county until it reverted to the Capital Improvement Board.
I'd also like to just potentially correct one thing, is that the document never gives the operation and management of the facility to that third-party entity. It is retained with either with the city or with the county and the CVC contract until a point in time where the construction is completed. Then it would be transferred to the CIB. So that it never lands with the not-for-profit 501c3.
Next, Bloomington Chamber of Commerce President Eric Spoonmore spoke on the agreement.
I think it's very refreshing to see a gesture of goodwill to Mayor-elect Thompson, and I hope that we can get as much of her input as possible as well, because she will be in charge of executing this well into the future along with the commissioners. So appreciated seeing that. I think, with any type of agreement like this with such magnitude and importance on this very long-awaited convention center expansion, it's good to take some time. And I don't see this as a member of the Capital Improvement Board and as a strong advocate for the convention center expansion as through the Chamber of Commerce. Don't see any concerns with taking a little bit of time. I think you're asking some very valid, legitimate, good questions. And I'm just very pleased with the progress that we continue to make with the convention center. Mr. Weichart was exactly correct. We're making great strides. We're working well together under his leadership as president of the Capital Improvement Board. And I know that we're going to get to the finish line with this project that the community is going to be very proud of. So thank you for all of your thoughtfulness and work on this. And we're here to support in any way that we can. Thank you.
Commissioner Penny Githens shared concerns that were brought up at the Monroe County Council meeting the day before. Their main concern being that County Council members are not allowed to be appointed to the board.
The way this is written right now, it excludes a member of the County Council from serving on the CVC.
Right, it does. It does. And I don't know that that's what we want to have happen.
Thomas added that it was unfortunate that the agreement was announced by the city as a done deal, and said that there are things that need to be clarified before approving it.
It is unfortunate that this was announced as a done deal, because I don't know where that came from, but it's not, and it shouldn't be. And we need to make sure that we are not revising parts of the CIB that we've already agreed to in that agreement. And we need to make sure that we're following state statute, and we need to make sure that we have a plan and exit strategy if we need it. I think there are things that are spelled out here that have already been written in the CIB, so I'm not sure why they're reiterated. But there are also a lot of things that needs further explanation and clarification and specification and detail. So looking forward to seeing where this goes. I certainly am hopeful that we can get something done at the end of the year or early next year.
Githens proposed that they look at the agreement for a little longer and work on what amendments they would like to make. The commissioners postponed the decision on the agreement. At their November 28th meeting, the Bloomington Board of Park Commissioners heard a contract with Baker Stonework for wall repair at Rose Hill Cemetery. This comes in the aftermath of a police high-speed chase in October, where a man crashed into a concrete wall and hit 3 headstones, according to Bloomington Police. Operations Superintendent for the city's Parks Department, Mark Muritz, walked through the contract with Baker Stonework.
Good evening, Mark Maras, Operations Superintendent, and I'm here to recommend approval for a contract with Baker Stonework to repair a section of the southwest corner wall of Roseville Cemetery where that police chase pursued. We're going to do it in a fashion, though, that's going to create a little bit of an opening there, leaving a center column in there, so you got about a 3-foot space between each side with a 1-foot column in there. These guys have done a lot of great work for us through the years, and we're confident they'll do this job very well also.
The board approved the contract unanimously. The board then heard of a review of a contract with Ecologic for the 2024 deer browse monitoring project at Griffey Lake Nature Preserve. Natural Resources Manager Steve Cotter provided the update.
Yes, we have been working with Ecologic to monitor the vegetation heights at Griffey in specific quadrats, following the deer hunts to see if it's working, and it appears that it is. The general trend is that the plants are getting taller. We have been taking deer out there since 2017, and we feel that we need to continue to allow the plants to recover to the point where they can continue to reproduce in the nature preserve. The total for the spring browse monitoring would be $6,435, and the same amount for the late summer woody monitoring for a total of $12,870.
Board member Jim Whitlatch asked if the cost of the contract has remained consistent or if it has gone up. Board member Kathleen Mills also asked how the initiative has been going. Cotter responded.
Has that pretty much been the consistent price for that since we've had them do it, or has it gone up, or what's?
It's gone up a little bit. It was right around $30,000 for the first 3 years, and so we're adding a 4th year on, and it has gone up a little bit.
$10,000 a year the first 3 years,
Approximately.
and now it's up to around $12,000
Yes.
a year. Okay.
I saw maybe in one of Tim's weekly reports, it was about 25 deer that were,
They did
Killed
get
so far
25
this-
deer the first weekend. Yeah, we did not close the park on Thanksgiving weekend so that people could get out there and hike, but we have one more weekend this year, and we'll see how they do.
okay.
And that's for this weekend.
That is correct. Yeah, the park will be closed from Friday at 11 p.m. until Monday at 5 a.m.
The board approved the contract unanimously. At their meeting on November 27th, the Ellisville Town Council discussed changes to rural transportation's programming. Area 10 Agency on Aging Executive Director Chris Myers shared why they need to make these changes. She told the council that NDOT gives them funding for rural transportation. However, they cannot use their funds to provide transportation for non-urban areas into urban areas.
I'm Chris Myers. I'm with Area 10 Agency on Aging, and we do the rural transit, public transportation program services and have for decades in Monroe County, but also 3 other counties. And as you might be aware or might not be aware, I also provided you with information, very detailed information about this particular situation in your packet, hopefully. But we have provided the public transportation services for non-urban areas in Monroe County for a long time, which also includes Ellisville and the town of Ellisville residents. Unfortunately, we also can only use those funds to provide those transportation trips to people who are going from the county to the city or city to county. And historically, that's what we've always done, and didn't realize that we should not have actually gone within the urban area on both points of the trip all of this time. NDOT has come down earlier this year and said that we can no longer do that. FTA, when they finally had a redefinition of their 2020 census boundaries, said that they weren't going to allow any of that to happen anymore, and they knew that that was happening in certain urban areas. And NDOT worked through that situation with Indianapolis and the surrounding counties in their Indigo, which is their urban provider, and in Bloomington, the urban provider is Bloomington Transit, as you know. They get their funds directly from FTA, and they're the urban grant funds for transportation.
Myers presented further information regarding the changes that will need to be made and when.
So we were told that beginning January 1st, we would no longer be able to provide transportation trips where both points, the pickup and the drop-off, are within the urbanized area. This is a very different direction than what we had been providing, because we've been providing trips from outside the city to the city and vice versa, because Bloomington Transit hadn't provided that service outside of the city prior to now. So we had, kind of alerted the county to this situation and had multiple conversations, and I think we had a couple of town of Ellisville representatives at those meetings earlier in July to talk about what are the next steps. And we're kind of at that point now. We're getting close to the end of the year, of course, and needing to know if there are any alternative solutions to continuing providing that service after January 1st.
Myers said that there are many Monroe County residents that rely on rural transit to get from a rural area to an urban area, like downtown Bloomington or downtown Ellisville.
We have quite a few people who, as you would expect, rely significantly on rural transit for that provision of service, countywide, not just the Ellisville town, but what we found and what's in your packet, you'll see a time study of trips for the last 12 months, and about 8,000 trips a year are within those urban-to-urban trips, and 60% of those have been a pickup or drop-off in the town of Ellisville. Those were trips that were pulled by GPS coordinates by the NDOT consultants, so we didn't actually do any of that data analysis. That was done by RLS and Associates, but they used our trip data from our dispatch software.
Myers explained that the City of Bloomington's transportation program received approval to expand their boundaries of service to anywhere in the county. One option is for Bloomington to use their expansion to cover all of the urban areas. Monroe County Commissioner Julie Thomas spoke to the council about management options.
To start with, among the options that Bloomington Transit put on the table, these were informal discussions. The cheapest option was $312,000 a year estimate for both the county and Ellisville together. What Ms. Myers has put together is a $220,000 a year budget. With the 60-40 split, 60% would go to Ellisville at $132,000 for the year and $88,000 for the county. This would be billed monthly after the month has passed, so it would be based on actual ridership. So those numbers may flux. But the good news is, for residents of the county and Ellisville, the town of Ellisville, is that this would be seamless. They would get a rural transit service, rural transit bus, door-to-door effort, the same as before. They wouldn't know how we're managing this. And I think that's a real benefit as well.
Councilmember Trent Deckard noted that although these new options aren't ideal, they have to figure something out before January 1st.
This obviously is not a choice or a thing any of us would pick to have to manage or deal with. But the reality is that we are going to have a mess come January 1st if we don't step into our roles as public officials and do our duty. When I, from a county council fiscal perspective, and I have the privilege of representing people on both sides of the borders of this town, when I look at this and I look at the two different options, I don't want to disparage Bloomington Transit's option, but it costs more, number one. Number two, the thing that concerns me is anything that stops on December 31st with one service provider and starts on January 1st with the new service provider makes me nervous about it being consistent for a person that needs it to be consistent.
Deckard also emphasized that these changes were introduced by the state and not the county.
I also want to reiterate, the county's not made this decision. This is coming from NDOT. I don't want to question their wisdom, but this is what they've given us, and we do have some options. And so from a county perspective, we are now, as the fiscal body, figuring out for our portion with that $88,000 estimate where that's going to come from. We're looking at sources now. In fact, the reason I'm late is I left a meeting where we were doing that. The commissioners also were present with us. And so we're like you, we're figuring this out. but know that it is what it is come January 1st, and it's pretty grave, depending on what we do or do not do. So again, thanks for having us.
President William Ellis agreed with the need for a transit service.
I do think from talking to council members and other supervisors, I think it's crucial to make this almost seamless for the riders, because a lot of them are elderly. They may be on their own, and if all of a sudden they have different numbers to call, different drivers, different pickups, I just cannot imagine the hardship. We just have to figure out how.
Town manager Mike Farmer asked about the future cost of the services. He wanted to know if the amount they have to pay will grow as the town also grows. Commissioner Thomas responded.
Yeah, his question is about whether that percentage that Ellisville would have to pay in the future would grow. And I would just reiterate that this is going to be billed out based on actual ridership month to month. So we'll know what the trend is month to month as we go on.
Ellis emphasized the importance of transportation regardless of the cost.
I don't want anybody to be priced out, or this is a crucial service for people, because point blank, if some people don't get this service, they may not be able to go to the doctors, may not be able to get food. The ones that most need it. And I don't think anybody usually uses it for just a luxury trip. They have no one else, and we're it.
Ellis said although he would like to take action on the transportation issue, he is still unsure of how they would fund it.
I'd love to say we could take action tonight, but it would be unfunded action, so it would...
Not responsible.
Yeah, we really can't, and I think our county counterparts can... we have been having this conversation about where to get money from. It just... gosh. All right, I hate to leave it on a big question mark, but I guess you can reassure the riders they will be taken care of. We just have to figure out how.
The Ellisville Town Council will continue this conversation at their next meeting on December 11th. And that's all for CATSweek. Thanks for joining us. For CATS and WFHB, I'm Martin O'Neill.
for hurting families in Monroe County.
A contribution to children who are vulnerable and in need of an advocate.
A staff that goes above and beyond to support and advocate for children in need of services.
The web of remarkable people who are dealing with difficult situations.
So many young people that are in need of help and trying to find a stable family, a stable place to live. Without the CASAs to make that happen, many of them would be unable to find a good home.
I love being that voice for the child who can't speak for themselves in court.
It takes me out of my comfort zone, and it also helps others.
CASA means supporting our community.
Being a CASA is making sure that your village is healthy and whole, and that the children in your village will someday be able to help the village as well.
A child who doesn't have a voice, maybe in their family situation or a school situation, now has a voice that can advocate for them.
I really enjoy working with children that are going through difficult times and letting them know that I care about their future.
We are privileged with our charge of representing the best interest of children. And so therefore we can advocate for exactly what they need without restriction, focusing on their best interest.
I want to repair the world one child at a time.